guys, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be sharing 3 farmhouse decor DIYs. Even though we're getting ready to move into fall, I did style these projects a little bit more for summertime. As many of you know, I am currently moving across country and I did pre-film all of these projects a while back. I was just able to get this video all edited and up for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed today's projects. If you do, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Now let's go ahead and jump right into today's DIYs. For DIY number 1, I'm making a mason jar shaped sign. For this one, I ended up just using a mason jar shaped sign that I picked up from Dollar Tree, and I peeled off the stars that were on the front of it so that I can use those for a project later on. And as many of you know, I like to use the backs of these signs as the front of mine. So I'm just flipping this one over and then I'm painting the back surface of it with my Folk Art milk paint in the color Cottage Green. Milk paint is a little bit thinner of a consistency, and this was the first time I ever used it and I really liked it. You do have to build up the color and do a few more coats than you would with like a chalk paint, but I really liked how this applied. Once that paint was all dry, I then took my Waverly chalk paint in the color Hazelnut on a chip brush and I dry brushed that over top of the Cottage Green color. I did use some more paint in areas than in others. I wanted this piece to look rustic and distressed. Next, I'm taking this Happiness is Homemade stencil that I picked up from Joann Fabrics. This stencil did come in a pack of stencils, and I will have those linked down in the description box in case you guys are interested in those. I'm making sure that it's centered on the front of my sign before I use some painter's tape to hold down all of the edges. Then I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster on a Dollar Tree stencil brush, and I'm just painting that color over the words Happiness is Homemade. I am not going to be using the actual like mason jar outline of this stencil. I'm only doing the heart and the words. Once I had that paint applied, I then peeled off the painter's tape and removed my stencil. Now I'm going to be making the bow for my sign. I'm cutting a strip of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree, and then I'm hot gluing the 2 ends of that piece of ribbon together to form a circle. I'm doing 3 different size pieces of ribbon, and this one is the medium size one. I'm then bunching it up in the middle and then just twisting it, and then just making sure that it's the correct size to fit on the front of my sign. Next, I'm cutting a second piece of ribbon, and this one is going to be the smallest one, and I'm just doing the same thing, hot gluing the 2 ends of this piece of ribbon together to form a circle. I'm not sure why I did them out of order. I went medium, small, and then the largest, but I did. For this one, I'm not going to be twisting it in the middle. I'm just going to be bunching it up, and this is going to be like the front piece of my bow. And then for the third piece of burlap ribbon, this one is the largest one. And again, I did the same thing, just hot glued the 2 ends of that ribbon together. And then in the center of the ribbon, I again just twisted it. Then I'm stacking all of my ribbons that I just made for my bow. The largest piece of ribbon I'm having on the bottom with the loops pointing downward. My medium-sized one I placed on top of the largest one, and those loops are going to be facing upward. And then I'm taking the third piece of ribbon and I'm just placing that in the center. I'm then taking a piece of cotton cord, wrapping it around the center to form my bow, just tying that off in the back, cutting off the excess ends, and then I'm hot gluing my bow right in the center of my sign above the words Happiness is Homemade. I wanted to have a little bit more of a darker color around all of the edges of my sign, so here I'm taking my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Java, and I'm just dry brushing that around all of the edges of my sign just to give it a little bit more dimension and make it look a little bit more rustic and distressed. Once I had that paint all on, I'm then taking some jute and I'm putting it through the pre-drilled holes that were already on the sign. And once I have that exactly the length that I wanted, I'm just tying off the jute, cutting off the excess, and then I'm also adding another piece of cotton cord in between the piece of jute that I just strung for the top of my hanger, and I'm just hot gluing the ends of the cotton cord on the back side of my sign. And this just adds a little bit more detail to the hanger of my sign. I was going to leave my sign as is, but then I decided I wanted to add some greenery around my bow on the front of my sign. So here I just cut down the stems of these boxwoods and then picked them off so that they were a little bit smaller and easier to work with. I then placed hot glue around my bow and then just stuck the boxwoods onto the glue to attach them. And I did this all around the bow. And here is my Happiness is Homemade sign all finished. I think this turned out super cute and I'm really loving how this bow turned out. It was my first time making a bow like this and I know that I'm going to be making many more of them in the future. Now moving into DIY number 2, I'm making a lemon wreath. For this one, I started with a grapevine wreath that I picked up from Dollar Tree and some of these boxwood stems from Walmart. I'm just picking the stems right off so that they are easier to work with. And I started by placing hot glue right onto the grapevine wreath and then placing one of my boxwood stems onto the glue to attach it. You do have to hold the boxwoods in place until the glue dries or they'll move around and fall out of place. So that takes a little bit more time, but if you have like a hair dryer or a fan or something, it does take a lot less time, and that's what I ended up doing when making this. I'm also using some lamb's ear on my wreath. I'm cutting them down a little bit so that they are easier to attach onto my wreath. These ones I believe are from the Target dollar spot a long time ago, but Walmart sells them for a really good price and they're also really good quality. Here I'm doing the same thing I did with the boxwoods. I'm just placing the hot glue right onto my wreath and then attaching the lamb's ear to the glue. I am having to hold them into place just like I did with the boxwoods until the glue dries. Once I have a good amount of the boxwood and lamb's ear stems onto my wreath, I'm then attaching a lemon. The lemons I got in a pack from Michael's, and I did the same thing, just hot glued them right onto the wreath and then used some more hot glue to attach some more boxwoods and lamb's ear around the lemon, and I am covering up most of the grapevine wreath. I just continued that same step over and over again until I covered my entire wreath. Now that I have my wreath all made, I'm now going to be creating the bow to go on my wreath. I'm cutting a piece of this striped ribbon that I picked up from Walmart around holiday time, and I'm hot gluing the two ends of that piece of ribbon together to form a circle. I'm then cutting a second piece of ribbon that's a little bit smaller than the first piece, and again just hot gluing those two end pieces together to form a circle. I'm then cutting a third piece of ribbon, which is larger than the first and the second piece, and for that one I'm not doing anything with. Then with the small and medium pieces of ribbon that I formed circles on, I'm then twisting them in the middle. I'm having the larger one with the loops facing downward and then the smaller one with the loops facing upward. For that third piece of ribbon I haven't done anything with. I'm just tying a knot right in the center, and this is going to be the tail ends for my bow. Now I'm cutting a fourth piece of ribbon. This one is going to be the smallest one that I've cut, and I'm hot gluing the two ends of that together again to form a circle. I'm placing the three pieces of ribbon that have loops on them together. The largest one, I'm having the loops facing downward, the medium-sized one with the loops facing upward, and then the third piece of ribbon that I cut, I'm placing in the center. I'm using a piece of jute to tie all three of those together. I'm then using some hot glue on the tail end of what's going to be my bow, which is that one long piece of ribbon with a knot in the center. I'm placing the hot glue right on the center of the knot and then placing my bow on top of that. And then to make my bow a little bit more polished, I'm just cutting the tail ends into a V shape. I hope that me explaining how to create that bow made sense to you guys. For the very last step, I just hot glued my bow right onto the top portion of my wreath. Here is my lemon wreath all finished. I think it turned out really cute. It was so easy to make, and it cost way less money for me to create this one at home than to purchase it in stores. Now for the last DIY for today, I'm making a farmhouse style caddy. For this one, I used a wooden caddy that I picked up from the Target dollar spot a while ago, and I just haven't done anything with it, so I finally decided to transform it. I'm using my Craftsmart wood stain in the color brown, and I'm just applying it with an old towel, and I'm doing one thin layer. I made sure to use the stain on the inside of the caddy as well so that it stays consistent around the entire caddy. After that stain was all dry, I then took my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster on a chip brush, and I used a pretty good amount of the paint when applying it over top of the stain, and I really messily painted this on. You guys know, if you've seen any of my previous videos, that I'm really into like the rustic worn paint look. So this is the method that I'm doing to create that look here on the Caddy. I made sure that I did the same method on the entire thing, again, because I wanted to stay consistent through the entire project. After that plaster color was all dry, I then started stamping the word homemade right on the front center of my Caddy. You don't have to put any word if you didn't want to, but I wanted to, and the word I chose was homemade. I thought about doing the word farmhouse, but then decided to just stick with the homemade word. And all of my letters are not exactly centered onto the front, but I think that this gave it a more vintage feel, and I love how it turned out. To add some more detail, I'm hot gluing some cotton cord around the handle of my Caddy. I placed the hot glue right onto the end of the cotton cord and then attached it to the handle. I let it sit there for a minute until it was dry before I started wrapping the cotton cord around the handle over and over again until I had the center of the handle completely wrapped. I then cut off the extra cotton cord and then just hot glued that end piece down. To decorate the inside of the Caddy, I decided to use some of these boxwoods, again from Walmart. I cut them off of the stems so that they were a little bit easier to work with. And you could do floral foam on the inside of the Caddy and then stick the stems of the boxwoods into that, but I decided to just throw the boxwoods in kind of randomly into the Caddy. And then I used some of these lemons, again, that I picked up from Michael's, just placed them over top of the boxwoods and then just kind of pulled up the boxwoods around however I felt that it looked nice. And to add a little bit of a finishing touch, I took some of the lamb's ear and just placed those around the lemons. Here is my homemade Caddy all finished. I, again, really love how this one turned out. This one you can use year-round if you wanted to and just switch out all of the seasonal things in the center. You could put Christmas or fall, but right now I have it styled with lemons for summer. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it. It really helps out my channel. If you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing. Please be sure to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And you guys, I am still in the process of moving, so I'm going to try to get as many videos up for you as I possibly can, but please bear with me during this time. Again, as always, thank you so much for watching.